The first bit of news is the image that I actually just had up there, but that David Goyer is going to be, or maybe directing, uh, the Green Lantern Corps movie. He is currently co-writing with Justin Rhodes, the movie, but it could be like he's could be doing more. And it's no surprise that we are not the biggest Goyer fans.
Well, I
So
mean, Goyer is not a fan of comic fans in general from some of the statements that he's made. And that's part of the problem is that Goyer has had a lot of success. A lot of his successes have come from working in comics or comic properties. He worked as a writer on the Constantine series. He worked on Batman v Superman, Man of Steel, the Blade films, the Dark Knight films from Batman Begins on up. Even Jumper, which is not necessarily comic book related, has a comic book movie feel. But he kind of says some unpalatable things as far as comic fans and comic properties go. He's been on the record pointing out that he believes that She-Hulk is basically a sexual version of a woman for the Hulk to have sex with, even though they're cousins. But basically, it's just like, yeah, it's the Hulk that as a teenage boy you want to see get banged. On top of that, he said things like, "Who in the room at a comic convention has heard of Martian Manhunter?" And then when people have their hands raised, now how many of you have actually had sex? And basically implies that, of course, if you've heard of this comic book character, you must be a virgin. You must fit a stereotypical ideal of what people have been placed into for decades when it comes to being comic book fans. So it's always nice to have one of the heroes of the industry come in there and just reconfirm that to you. And then he says things like Martian Manhunter is stupid. You can't call him Martian Manhunter because that's dumb. So he should just be called Manhunter. It's a lack of appreciation for the genre, which is strange considering how deeply indebted he is to it. And every time he works on stuff, it's like it's hit or miss. Some of it is taken well. The first two Blade movies were certainly taken well. First two Batman movies I certainly liked a lot. But he's had his rough spots too, and certainly when it comes to directing, he hasn't had any real success. Blade Trinity, which obviously a lot of the problems with that came from the lead star, but Threshold, The Invisible, The Unborn, the flash forward couple episodes of his Da Vinci's Demon series, it's not like he's been a big name director in any regards. So it would be kind of strange to put him in charge of one of these flagship movies that Warner Brothers is still trying to get out when they're struggling so hard to get these films made. It seems like, I don't know why they would chance it on this guy, but again, he keeps winding up getting billed for stuff like this. So
yep.
I guess I shouldn't be too surprised.
No, yeah, definitely. I mean, it is definitely a weird thing to have happen. I mean, especially because I don't want to see this. To me, screams that he's just doing this for a paycheck. Like,
well, it, like I said, he's part of the system. He's part of the DC films, anyways. He's been writing these screenplays with the geez, I can't even think of his name. The guy that I bitch about every fucking week. Zack Snyder. Superman. Yeah, Zack Snyder. He's already been working with him on these things, and so it is kind of maybe it's a reward system of, oh well, you're such an integral part of this. Why wouldn't we let you take the reins of this? But
that's the problem. That's honestly the problem though, because look over at the Marvel side. Jon Favreau loved Iron Man, loves comic books. and all this, has a respect for the fans. Made Iron Man, Iron Man 2, has made or been involved in a lot of the stuff. You go on down the road, you get the Russos, you get Joss Whedon, with the Avengers movies, and it's one of these things that it's like you see respect for the fans, respect for the source material, not saying things like, "Oh well, even though I'm from Detroit, I'm going to make a Kentucky statement and say that, I think Jennifer Walters would fuck her cousin," and and stuff like that.
By the way, he is from Ann Arbor, just so you know.
Oh,
let's be realistic, though. There have been
sorry,
plenty
Detroit
of
Life.
comic artists, comic writers throughout history who have not necessarily respected the fans, but still had very prolific careers in the industry. I think it's more of Jon Favreau had a good degree of success before going and doing Iron Man. Didn't do anything like Iron Man, though, at that point in time. The expectations were incredibly low. They didn't know that Iron Man was going to blow up the way that it did. The Russo brothers, again, we knew them. We knew that they could direct, but we hadn't seen them do something like they did until they did The Winter Soldier. So that changes things. So yeah, you can grab somebody who and like raise their expectations by putting them in charge of these films. I don't know what the hiring process is, something like that. It feels more like, oh wait, who have we got in the room right now who maybe wants to direct Green Lantern? Because fuck, we just keep blowing through directors once a week. It seems like here's our runner for this movie. Flash. How many directors has Flash gone through so far? How many directors? Obviously, at least 2 now for Batman. With now the star, the guy who's supposed to be playing Deathstroke in that doesn't even know if he's playing the character anymore because the entire thing's been scrapped and rebooted. Aquaman's going to push back a couple of months now. They're trying to put a 3rd film on the docket just to fill the gap that they've created by everything running late. And that's kind of the scary thing too, is that they don't have a handle on the films that they're already doing. Unless they're planning on moving Green Lantern up, though. At least it was something that was not planned for a few years. But it's still just very strange that there's so much that they should be like 100% dialed in on at this point, and they just keep having to swat bugs away. I don't know what is going on in this studio right now. It's not encouraging.
Yeah, and Beatmaster's putting out a quote from the article that was taken by the tracking board reporter Jeff Snyder, that he mentioned on his on a recent episode of Meet the Movie Press, a podcast that he co-hosts each week. He's saying that and I'm going to paraphrase all of this. He's hearing that David Goyer could very well wind up directing the Green Lantern Corps himself, and that he's essentially been, like you said, been the architect. He wrote Batman Begins and The Dark Knight, and he wrote Man of Steel. And he's, the last little bit is what he has heard, one of these situations where Goyer could be like, listen, I may be the best guy for the job. No one knows this like I do. That worries me. That honestly worries me, because I think we might end up with another. I want to be optimistic. I try to live my life optimistically. Hope for the best and then get the worst has always been how I want to do things. And I have a feeling we might get another Green Lantern movie that we will force out of our minds, like that one that starred a dude who later became Deadpool.
But that movie, you got to keep in mind, Martin Campbell directed, and Martin Campbell before that had done Casino Royale. He had done movies where he was a successful director. He'd done the Zorro movies with Banderas. He had done Goldeneye. He had a pedigree, and he made a terrible Green Lantern movie. A Green Lantern movie that had writers that write the DC shows now that are very widely considered a huge success. So you can fail with the right people, which means you can also succeed with the people that are perceived as not necessarily the best choices.
No, yeah,
I'm not gonna count the guy out. It's just I kind of wonder who wants to direct these DC films at this point. I have to question who is sitting there and saying to themselves, I am champing at the bit to get to do the next Superman movie or the next Aquaman movie or Flash movie or whatever, because so many people come and go through this. I mean, we've seen people leave in the midst of working on Marvel films. Obviously, Ant-Man is a big one because that was in development for so long and it was associated with one guy that everybody was looking forward to this happening. And then for him to leave felt like a pretty big setback. But
yeah,
for the most part, a lot of the stuff that happens on the Marvel films in that regard, it just sort of happens and it gets swept under the rug because it's not a big deal. It's not like we've seen it affect the films. The DC films have a problem currently with their success rate, that they should be landing bigger, and they're just not. And so I wonder who's looking at this and saying, "Oh, I want to go into that room and be the person who makes something great out of this," because maybe people right now are too afraid to do it.
yeah. I don't know, but again, time will tell, and I honestly hope I'm wrong. I would rather eat crow and say, okay, yes, David Goyer did a great Justice League movie than go, I was right. He fucking sucked. And all that.
Yeah, at the end of the day, for me, I don't give a shit about the person who made the movie. If I enjoyed the movie, there
Yeah.
are certainly times I don't watch Woody Allen movies because I think Woody Allen is a fuck all. Um, I but I do know that I've watched films by people who are not necessarily the best people and still manage to enjoy the movies.
Yeah.
It's tough to moralistically judge art based off the artist more than what's presented in front of you. So if Goyer is an asshole but he makes a good film, then I'm not going to begrudge him for it. I really want the DC universe to succeed. I'm still a long ways away from thinking that it can, but I would love it if it happened. I just,
Yeah.
I see decisions like this and it confuses me, but I'm not in that room and I'm not the one who has to make these decisions, thank God.
All right. So I got a question for you, Corey.
Yes, sir.
Can you tell me how to get to Sesame Street?
You practice.
I
No, that's not it.
practice.
That's something else entirely. No, I think you make right at the first star and straight on to no, that's something else. If you believe really no, you grab a Snuffleupagus' taint. Something. It's been such a long time. But I think I know where we're going. I think I know where this
Yes.
story is headed.
So, um, for those of you guys who do not know, Sesame Street, and how could you not know, is essentially an American institution. When you think American television, here, at least here in America, you think of a few things. You think The Price is Right when you're sick, and usually it's like you're sick and you're like, cuddled up at your grandma's house eating chicken noodle soup, and then on comes this. But then there's the show that has been around for almost 50 years, that started in 1969 and answered a simple question that changed the world when it came to television. Could television be used to educate young children? We obviously found out that this answer is yes, because they are in their 48th season, something like that.
Yeah.
And they're on HBO, you know, and they're still on PBS Kids, so don't freak out about that part. But they're actually going to do something special here. They're going to air an episode on both HBO and PBS Kids at the same time. They're introducing a new Muppet called Julia. Now, why would we be talking about a Muppet?
Well, I mean, I talk about Muppets all the time because that's my jam.
Well, yeah, but still, I mean, to talk about something on a show that teaches kids, you know, their ABCs, their one, two, threes, and stuff like that. Well,
And near and far.
yeah, both near and far. Um, that's very simple. This Muppet has autism. Now, before you get like become a smartass and go, well, it's just a puppet. It doesn't can't have it. It's portraying a kid with autism, and actually, I believe is modeled after a kid, like an actual real life kid, which I find really interesting.
It's modeled after a lot of different aspects that they weighed very heavily to figure out which ones to portray in this particular character. Now, it is part of the creation came from a mother and her son who has autism. But what they're trying to specifically do is introduce it to kids so that they're not afraid of it when they meet somebody who has autism. They're not confused or put off by them. And one of the things about autism is that the way that it's displayed is almost always very different. You know, it's an individual thing. It's not like anybody has the same sort of characteristics that they display. There might be some that are similar, but realistically, it's different for everybody who has it. And of course, there's different levels of autism. My brother has Asperger's, which have found in more members of my extended family going on. It's one of those things that the mystery of it is still kind of a big thing, is that people don't understand it. And like you said, we grew up watching Sesame Street. I grew up watching Sesame Street. It's part of why I had a love of reading, a love of characters,
Yep.
a lot of different things. Some of my favorite books as a kid were like the monster at the end of this book, or Grover Plays Hide and Seek. Those things, like I still have copies of those today because they're treasures to me. And if this had been something that I could have grown up with too, this type of character, then it would have made a lot of the things in finding it about my brother and other people. It would have made it a lot easier for me because I would have an understanding going in.
And the question, I'm going to read this actually from the interview. This was originally from CBS, from their 60 Minutes, and they asked the question about how to portray autism. And it's like you said, Christine Ferrero, the writer on Sesame Street for 25 years, she says it's tricky because autism is not one thing, because it's different for every single person who has autism. There is an expression that goes, if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. And so I mean, this is a really cool thing, because Sesame Street for me has always, in a lot of the ways, it's how I look at the X-Men, because the X-Men at the core, or for me at the core of them, it was always about equality. We are people where we might be different. I might be fat, you might be skinny, you might have glasses, you might be, blue and furry and love cookies. We're all people. We're all humans.
And everybody has something that kind of makes them special or individual.
Yeah.
And and you're right. That's another thing too, is something that it never even occurred to me that it was something to admire about Sesame Street, but it's always been there, is that it's always been multicultural. It was the first time I heard anybody speak Spanish was not in real life. It was on Sesame Street.
With Rosita, I believe.
Oh, probably before Rosita. Remember, 70s, like way different time. But just in general, there was always different people of different cultures, different races. I know that they've introduced a character that has AIDS on the show a few years ago. They dealt with the death of Mr. Hooper on the show in a children's program, where that's something that very easily could have been just something that they glazed over and skipped. They dealt with it head on, and they dealt with the pain of loss and how that affects the characters that are still there. And it still is one of those things that is very real to me today, because even though I was old enough to understand that stuff at the time that it happened. It was such a big deal to see it experienced by such an innocent character as Big Bird, and to understand that for kids, this is probably their first understanding of death. And it's something that parents don't know how to explain to children. And it's not something you can explain until you experience it.
Yeah, that's the one thing that I truly love about, or one of the things I truly love about Sesame Street, and why can't wait for my niece to get a little bit older so I can just be like, hey, Sesame Street, and I could start watching it with her again, and maybe they'll finally tell me how to get there.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I'll still put on Sesame Street here and there and watch that stuff.
Oh no, yeah. When I had HBO last year, this was like right when they had made the announcement that they were going to be on, and she's not even a year old, and I'm sitting there with her on my lap going, can you say, who is that? Can you say count? And all that. She's not doing any of it because she's only like 8 months old, 7 months old, and all that. And I'm still like, don't care.
Yeah.
Because she wasn't crying, she was watching the TV. Don't know if she could truly see what was going on or know what was going on, but still, it's like, I don't care. I might get HBO just to watch it some more.
This is sort of for you, kid, but it's really for me.
Yeah. Well, because I honestly did that the other last Friday when I had to, or we had lost power here from the windstorms. I had to go over to my grandma's house and watch her, and I put on an old, well, not me old, it was when I was a kid, a show called Zaboomafoo that was aired on PBS, and so I could sort of take a nap while she's in this playpen, playing with her toys and watching the TV, because of all the different animals and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, it's Sesame Street, and I really love that they're doing this.
Yeah, and I'm glad that Sesame Street gets to continue to exist. I mean, a lot of people were upset when it became Sesame Street was moving over to HBO, but HBO, what they were doing is they were paying essentially for Sesame Street to continue to be, especially right now when we're losing funding to PBS overall. It's because of HBO that we're going to that Sesame Street's not a part of that. That yes. Sesame Street is going to continue to be out there for the kids of the next generation. And I think that that's incredibly important. I think PBS itself is incredibly important too. But certainly the closest to my heart is going to be Sesame Street. It's just, it's been around forever. And I want to see, my nephew get to watch it. I want to see the kids of the next generations get to watch it and be a part of it too.
So what I'm hearing from you is all of our listeners should send this part right here to Donald Trump saying, and being the reason why not to cut public or the funding for the National Broadcasting Corporation.
Or, put your money towards PBS directly. Everybody needs a fucking tote bag once in a while.
Hells yeah. All right, the next story is one that I it's Top Gear time, okay, folks? I know I talked about it before, but I'm truly excited for this news because this is the news that BBC America is bringing Top Gear to the US again. Now, I know what you're saying, dumbass, it already airs it already airs with Matt LeBlanc, Roy Reed, Chris Harris on Sunday nights. I am not talking about that. No. I am talking about Top Gear America. Now, forget, that one that abomination of a show that starred Tanner Faust. I'm blanking on the other guys' names. Rutledge Wood and Adam Ferrara. Forget that show. This show is going to star William Fichtner, who was in The Dark Knight, Contact, Armageddon. Excuse me. Professional drag racer Antron Brown, not Alton Brown. I'm like, wait, what? And then British automotive journalist Tom Ford. The BBC America has ordered 8 one-hour episodes, and they will air later this year. And the only announcements that we really have is that it will be filmed in Las Vegas. It will seem, I'm not sure if they're going to go with this format or a format, like by this I mean like a format similar to the one that uses the set here from series 24, or are they going to go um more the classic Top Gear with the former or the now Grand Tour hosts. But this will be at their track will be at Speed Vegas. And of course, the Stig, the Top Gear's mysterious test driver, will be leaving everyone in his petrol hazed wake. So I look forward to. I love this. I love hearing this, and seeing that it's hopefully going to be Top Gear, but with American people, focusing more on American like concepts when it comes to the cars. Not just, oh well, here we're going to test a hypercar, which I love. Don't get me wrong, I love seeing that stuff. But that's not really American. That's the European model of things. So like come over here and yeah, we got the muscle cars, and we got the modded cars, and we got the old school cool cars and stuff like that. That's what I want to see. That's what I'm hoping that we'll get here in this season. Corey, does this interest you at all, or was that just me ranting?
I still haven't seen a goddamn thing of Top Gear. I don't know what the hell this show is.
So you know that thing that's in your driveway, right? It's got the 4 wheels, and you put the key in it, and it goes, and it takes you to work.
Sort of. Not
it's
really.
a show about that. But the thing, it's called a car.
So I gotta watch people go to work every day. The fuck you talking about?
No, that's WWE's ride along. But they're at work already. They're reviewing the
I've
cars.
seen that show. It's called Carpoolers. It was shit then. It's shit now. The Caveman show was better. I don't know. I mean, the thing is that cars aren't really my interest level. Like I'll watch things like I watched Monster Garage for a while when it was on. I like the building aspect of it, the creating something new. That's something else. But I don't know, man. It's just like I'm not into the muscle cars, the racing stuff. None of that stuff has ever been my bag. But I get why it's other people's.
Yeah, and I mean the big thing with it is honestly going to be the camaraderie, because that's what was like I said last week in my review of the new series. That's what we got here with this show, with this series, that we didn't with last season with Chris Evans. We didn't get that camaraderie. It just seemed like we're here doing a job. We're here driving this car while we're going to work.
I mean, I don't understand that at all either, though, because I hate people.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, here the only reason we do this is because I probably just I'm like, oh, he's a video person. I don't know I've never met him in real life.
I mean, I'm just David Goyer showing up for a paycheck. I'm still waiting, by the way.
Sorry, it's in the mail. Like Nigeria keeps taking it. But I mean, yeah. So that's honestly I'm excited for this. I know a lot of people are going to be excited too. I just hope it is good. I don't want to see, because I quickly went away from the Top Gear that was on the History Channel. My mom's boyfriend, he really likes it, and every time I say Top Gear, he goes to that one. I'm like, no, the better one, the British one, the one where they do car reviews, not just we're gonna drive this car or these old, not muscle cars, these old like 60s, station wagons across the Sierra Nevada mountains, and stupid shit like that. Well, I shouldn't say stupid, but I mean sort of missing the point of what Top Gear is at its essence.
Yeah, but we do know, of course, that you are slightly British biased.
Um, well, I mean, let's just put it to you this way: there is a British person in my Minecraft community that I am more British than he is. He says it himself. Like he's more American than I am, and I am more British than he is.
I think that it's his polite way of telling you to stick a toad in your hole.
Well, I think that's going to do it for the Else News. We will be right back.
Open you up like